fired," Austin said, the corner of his mouth twitching upward in that smug, practiced half-smile I used to think was charming. "Pack your things and get out." He didn't even look up from his phone when he said it. He just slid the termination letter across the polished mahogany of his desk, the desk we had picked out together at an estate sale 3 years ago, back when we were eating ramen and dreaming of becoming tech royalty. Now, it looked like a barricade. Monica was standing right behind him, of course. Her hand was resting on his shoulder, fingers splayed possessively against the fabric of his custom-tailored suit. She was wearing a crimson power suit that probably cost more than my first car, and her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "And take that piece of garbage with you," Austin added, flicking his wrist toward the corner of the office. He was pointing at my stool. The ergonomic rolling stool I had bought from a discount warehouse when we first moved into this office space. It had a wobbly wheel and a tear in the vinyl that I'd patched with duct tape, and it listed dangerously to the left. I had complained about that damn chair for 6 months, begging for an upgrade, while Austin sat in his $1,500 Herman Miller throne. "You want me to take the chair?" I asked, my voice flat. I didn't sound like a woman whose life was imploding. I sounded like I was ordering a sandwich. "We wouldn't want you to claim we kept your personal property," Monica chimed in, her voice dripping with that fake, sugary concern that HR people use right before they ruin your life. "It's a liability issue, really." I stood there for a second, just breathing. The air conditioning in the office was humming, a low, expensive sound. Through the glass walls, I could see the heads of 40 employees, engineers I had hired, developers I had trained, bobbing up and down, pretending to work while frantically slacking each other about the execution happening in the fishbowl. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't give them the meltdown they were so clearly hoping for. Austin wanted a scene. He wanted Crazy Harper to get dragged out by security so he could justify everything he was about to do. Instead, I walked over to that pathetic, broken stool. I gripped the worn plastic rim, and I started to drag it. The wheel was jammed so it didn't roll. It scraped. Screech! The sound was agonizingly loud against the polished concrete floors. It echoed through the open-plan office like a dying animal. Every single conversation stopped. Every head turned. I walked past the rows of desks, dragging this screeching metal carcass behind me. I saw Casey, my lead junior dev, look up with wide, watery eyes. She looked terrified. I saw the new sales guys, the bros Austin had hired last month to change the culture, smirking behind their monitors. This was supposed to be my walk of shame. Austin had choreographed it perfectly. The public firing, the humiliating prop, the mistress standing tall as the new queen. But as I pushed through the double glass doors and hit the blast furnace of the Phoenix heat, I wasn't thinking about shame. I was checking the mental clock in my head. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Once, twice. The signal. Austin didn't know I had just triggered the countdown. He thought this was the end of the story. He had no idea that I had called an emergency board meeting for exactly 24 hours from now. He thought I was taking out the trash. He didn't realize the trash was him. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I didn't drive home. Home was a 4-bedroom modern build in Scottsdale that smelled like Austin's cologne and lies. If I went there, I'd probably burn the place down, and arson looks bad on a resume. Instead, I wrestled the broken stool into the trunk of my sedan. It barely fit, one leg sticking up like a dead spider, and drove 20 minutes south to Tempe. I pulled into the complex of a nondescript apartment building, the kind with beige stucco and outdoor hallways. I parked in the back, checking my mirrors out of paranoia, and hauled the chair up 2 flights of stairs. This was my secret, my plan B. 2 months ago, when the doubt started turning into concrete dread, I had rented this studio apartment under my maiden name. Austin didn't know it existed. The bank accounts for the rent were routed through an old credit union account he had forgotten about. I unlocked the door and shoved the broken chair inside, kicking it into the corner. The apartment was sparse. It looked like the residence of a serial killer or a college student during finals week. There was a mattress on the floor, no frame, a mini fridge stocked exclusively with Red Bull and string cheese, and a desk. But the desk was magnificent. It was an L-shaped industrial slab holding 3 4K monitors, a server tower I'd built from spare parts, and a mess of tangled cables. This was the war room. I threw my blazer on the mattress and sat down at the terminal. I hit the spacebar and the screens roared to life. The glow of the monitors washed over the room, blue and harsh. On the left screen, a live countdown clock. 23 hours, 14 minutes until board meeting. On the center screen, the presentation deck, Project Icarus. It currently had 58 slides of pure weaponized evidence. On the right screen, real-time logs of Zenith Systems network traffic. I still had backdoor access. Austin had revoked my official credentials 10 minutes ago. I saw the notification pop up, but he had forgotten that I wrote the original kernel for the security protocol. You can't lock the architect out of the house she built. I cracked open a Red Bull. It fizzed, a sharp sound in the quiet room. "Okay, Austin," I whispered to the empty room. "Let's see how smart you really are." I looked at the broken chair in the corner. It looked pathetic. It looked beaten. "Stay there," I told it. "Tomorrow you're going to be a trophy." I needed to focus, but the adrenaline was making my hands shake. To calm down, I let my mind drift back to the beginning, to the moment I made the mistake of trusting him. 3 years ago, Arizona State University. I was a graduate student in computer science, living on caffeine and anxiety. I was building a predictive security algorithm, code that could sniff out a cyber attack before the hackers even hit enter. It was brilliant, and nobody understood it. I was in a campus coffee shop on a Tuesday night, surrounded by empty cups, staring at a wall of code that wasn't compiling. Is that a recursive neural network? I looked up. A guy was leaning over my shoulder. He had that shiny, well-fed look of an MBA student. Perfect hair, expensive watch, smile that said he'd never had to debug code at 4 a.m. in his life. "It's a predictive heuristic model," I corrected him, annoyed. He didn't blink. He just slid into the chair opposite me without asking. "I'm Austin, and whatever that is on your screen, it looks like $1 billion. That was Austin. He didn't know a Python script from a Python snake, but he could smell money from a mile away. We talked until the shop closed. Well, he talked. He talked about disruption and paradigm shifts and synergy. He spun a story where my code wasn't just a project, it was the foundation of an empire. "You build the engine," he told me, leaning in close, his eyes bright with what I thought was passion. "I'll build the car. We'll drive it to the moon, Harper." I fell for it. God, I fell for it so hard. I was the shy nerd who lived in the lab. He was the golden boy who could charm investors and make people listen. I thought we were the perfect team. 6 months later, we were married at the courthouse. My parents, immigrants who worked double shifts to put me through school, cried happy tears. His parents, who drove a Mercedes that cost more than my parents' house, looked at me like I was a stain on the upholstery. "What exactly does she bring to the table?" his mother had asked at the lunch afterward, cutting her chicken with surgical precision. "The future, Mom," Austin had said, defending me. "She's the genius. I'm just the suit." He defended me then. He made me feel like a partner. I looked at the countdown clock. 22 hours remaining. The man who defended me against his mother was gone. Or maybe he never existed. Maybe he was just playing the long game from the very first cup of coffee. The rot started 6 months ago. That's when Monica arrived. Zenith Systems was growing fast, too fast. We were valued at $23 million and the chaos was eating us alive. Austin sat me down at breakfast one morning, scrolling through his phone. "We need a COO, he said casually. "Someone to handle the logistics so you can focus on the code. You're drowning in paperwork, Harper." He was right. I was working 18-hour days. So when he brought Monica in for an interview, I was actually relieved. She was impressive. Stanford MBA, 5 years at a top consulting firm, impeccable resume, and honestly, I was excited to hire a woman. Our leadership team was a frat house. I was the only female voice in the room, and I was tired of being interrupted. "She's perfect," I told Austin after the interview. "She gets the vision." "You think so?" Austin asked. He looked almost eager. "Great, I'll make the offer." Monica started 2 weeks later. She brought homemade cookies to the office. She remembered everyone's birthdays. She reorganized the filing system. She was amazing. Then came the organizational chart. 3 months in, Austin called an all-hands meeting. Monica stood at the front of the room, clicker in hand, smiling that shark-like smile. "To streamline our reporting structure for the Series B investors," she said, "we've clarified the leadership hierarchy." She clicked the slide. At the top, Austin, CEO, directly below him, Monica, COO, and there, branching off to the side, 3 levels down, Harper, technical lead. Not co-founder, not CTO, technical lead, a mid-level manager title. I stood up so fast my chair fell over. "Excuse me?" "It's just for optics, Harper," Austin said smoothly in front of everyone. "Investors need to see a clear chain of command. You know you're the technical genius. We just need to show that operations are centralized." "I founded this company," I said, my voice shaking. "I wrote the code that pays everyone's salary." "Let's discuss this offline," Monica said, her voice dripping with condescension. "We don't want to waste the team's time." I looked around the room. The new hires looked confused. They looked at me like I was the problem, like I was the ego-driven obstacle to their success. That was the day I realized I wasn't a partner anymore. I was an employee, and employees can be fired. If the demotion was the smoke, the perfume was the fire. It started a month after Monica was hired, the late nights. Strategy sessions, Austin called them, board prep, financial modeling. He'd come home at 2 a.m. creeping into bed, trying not to wake me. But I was always awake. I'd lie there in the dark, my back to him, listening to him breathe, and I could smell it. It wasn't a subtle scent. It was heavy, vanilla, amber, and something smoky like expensive tobacco. It clung to his shirts. It was in his hair. It was the same perfume Monica sprayed in her office every morning. One morning, I confronted him. He was making coffee, looking disheveled and exhausted from his hard work. "You smell like her," I said. I didn't have the energy to be subtle. Austin froze. He set the coffee pot down a little too hard. The glass clinked against the granite counter. "Excuse me?" "Monica, you smell like Monica's perfume. Again." He spun around, and the look on his face wasn't guilt. It was fury. "Are you serious right now? I am killing myself to scale our company, working until dawn, and you're sniffing my laundry like a crazy person." "I'm not crazy, Austin. You come home at 3 a.m. every night. Because we have a board meeting coming up. Because we're trying to secure $10 million. Monica wears perfume, Harper. We work in a small conference room." "Sense transfer. Do you have any idea how paranoid you sound?" He was good. He was so good. He made me feel small. He made me feel like a jealous, insecure wife who didn't understand business. "I'm sorry," I mumbled, backing down. "I'm just tired." "Yeah," he said, turning back to his coffee. "You are. You've been really emotional lately, Harper. Maybe you need to take a step back. Let Monica handle the stress." He hugged me then. It felt like being hugged by a mannequin. That was the moment I stopped trusting him with my heart, but I still hadn't checked his laptop. That came next. It happened on a Tuesday. I had come home early because of a migraine, or maybe just depression. Austin came home at 7 p.m. for once, hopped in the shower, and left his laptop on the kitchen island. The water started running upstairs. I stared at the silver MacBook. I had never snooped before. I respected his privacy. He respected mine. That was the deal. But the smell of vanilla was still lingering in the hallway. I walked over to the laptop, My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack a bone. I opened the lid. Password prompt. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried our anniversary. Incorrect. I tried Zenith 2023. Incorrect. Then I remembered. He was a narcissist. I typed Austin is king. The desktop unlocked. I didn't go to his email first. I went to the browser history. Men like Austin are arrogant. They don't use incognito mode because they don't think they'll ever get caught. The history was a scrolling list of betrayal. Zillow. Luxury penthouse downtown Phoenix, 1.2 memers. Redfin. 3-bedroom condo, Scottsdale waterfront. Google search. Arizona divorce laws community property. Google search. How to remove a founder from a cap table. I clicked on the penthouse listing. There were notes saved in the browser extension. Note. Monica loves the kitchen island. Note. Master bath is perfect. Move-in date. October 1st. October 1st. That was 3 weeks away. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. They weren't just having an affair. They were house hunting. They were building a new life on the ashes of mine. The shower turned off upstairs. Panic spiked in my chest. I heard the bathroom door creak open. I quickly closed the browser tabs, wiped the history for the last 10 minutes, and shut the laptop. I stepped away from the island and grabbed a glass of water, my hands trembling so badly I spilled half of it on the floor. Austin walked into the kitchen, towel drying his hair. He looked at me, then at the laptop, then back at me. "You okay?" he asked. "You look pale." "Migraine," I lied. "Just getting water." "Go lie down," he said, sounding almost kind. "I've got some work to finish up." He walked over to the laptop, the machine that contained the blueprints of my destruction, and logged in. He didn't suspect a thing. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed and realized that divorce wasn't the worst thing happening. The search term, how to remove a founder, terrified me more than the penthouse. Back in the present, inside the war room, I shook off the memories. 18 hours until board meeting. I needed to finalize the financial section of the presentation. This was the smoking gun, the Orion problem. During my deep dive into the company servers last week, I had found a series of wire transfers. Money was bleeding out of Zenith Systems into 3 vendors I'd never heard of. Orion Consulting Group, $15,000 month. Stratum Logistics, $12,000 month. Vance Advisory, $20,000 one-time fee. Vance was Monica's last name. That one was just lazy. But Orion Consulting was the big fish. Over the last year, they had billed us nearly $200,000 for market analysis. I needed to prove Orion was a fake entity, a shell company. I pulled up the invoice for Orion. It listed an address in an industrial park in Mesa. Address 4401S, Industrial Way, Suite B. I decided to do a drive-by. I needed a photo of the office to show the board that it was fake. A photo of an empty mailbox or a residential house would be powerful visual evidence. I grabbed my keys and drove out to Mesa. It was 105 degrees outside, the sun blinding. I drove for 40 minutes, sweating through my t-shirt. The GPS led me further and further away from the business district and out into the dusty sprawl of the desert edge. "Arriving at destination," the GPS chirped. I looked out the window. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a house. It wasn't a mailbox store. It was a dirt lot. Just a fenced-off square of scorching dirt with a "for lease" sign that looked like it had been there since the 90s. There was no building, no Suite B, just tumbleweeds and a rusting dumpster. Damn it! I slammed my hand against the steering wheel. This was a false lead, or rather it was too fake. If I showed a picture of a dirt lot to the board, Austin could claim it was a clerical error on the invoice. Oh, the admin typed the wrong zip code. He could spin this. I needed something concrete. I needed to know where the money actually went, not just where the invoice said it went. I had wasted 3 hours driving out here. The sun was beating down on the car, turning it into an oven. I reversed the car, gravel crunching under my tires. Physical surveillance was a bust. I needed to follow the digital money, and for that, I needed an accountant. I met Layla at a dive bar called The Rusty Spoke at 4:01 p.m. Layla was my college roommate and a forensic accountant for a Big Four firm. She was the only person I trusted. I slid into the booth. The vinyl was sticky. I dropped a thick manila folder on the table between our beers. "You look like hell," Layla said, taking a sip of her IPA. "Did you sleep?" "Austin fired me this morning," I said. Layla choked on her beer. "He what?" "He fired me, and Monica helped. But that's not why I'm here. Look at this." I opened the folder. It contained the screenshots of the wire transfers, the fake invoices, and the Orion dirt lot photo I'd just taken. Layla put on her reading glasses. Her demeanor changed instantly. She went from supportive friend to shark. She flipped through the pages, tracing the numbers with a manicured fingernail. "Harper," she whispered, "this isn't just embezzlement. This is structuring. Explain. Look at the amounts. $9,900, $9,500, $9,800. They're keeping the transfers just under the $10,000 reporting threshold for automatic IRS flagging. That's federal crime territory. That's willful intent to defraud." "I knew it," I said, feeling a grim satisfaction. "They're stealing my company's cash to buy their penthouse." Layla closed the folder and put her hand on mine. Her grip was tight. "You need to be careful," she said. "If this is what I think it is, Austin isn't just a cheating husband. He's a criminal. If he finds out you have this, he will destroy everything to cover his tracks. He'll wipe the servers. He'll magnetize the backups." "He thinks I'm gone," I said. "He thinks I'm crying in my bedroom." "Good. Stay a ghost," Layla warned. "But this..." She tapped the folder. "It's not enough. Screenshots can be faked. You need the raw server logs. You need the IP addresses that initiated these transfers. If you can prove the transfers were made from Austin's laptop or Monica's iPad, you nail them to the wall." "I can't get the logs remotely," I said. "He cut my VPN access. I have the backdoor for the code, but the financial logs are on the secure local server, physically." Layla looked at me. "Then you have to break in." The Zenith Systems office building had keycard access after 8 p.m. My keycard, as of 9:20 a.m. this morning, was a useless piece of plastic. It was 2 a.m., 12 hours until board meeting. I parked my car a block away in the shadows of a neighboring warehouse. I pulled my hood up and walked toward the back entrance of the building. The air was still hot, the pavement radiating the day's heat. I walked up to the glass door. Inside, sitting at the security desk, was Sid. Sid was a retiree who worked the graveyard shift. He spent most of his time reading paperback thrillers and eating hard candies. Austin treated Sid like furniture. He never said hello, never learned his name, and once threatened to fire him because Sid didn't open the door fast enough when Austin had his hands full of latte trays. I, on the other hand, brought Sid donuts every Friday. We talked about his grandkids. I tapped on the glass. Tap, tap, tap. Sid looked up. He squinted. Then he stood up, confused, and walked over. He opened the door a crack. "Miss Harper?" he whispered. I heard you got let go. The email went out." "I did, Sid," I said. "I forgot something. Something important, personal." Sid looked at me. He looked at the empty parking lot. He wasn't stupid. He knew fired employees weren't supposed to come back at 2 a.m. "Mr. Austin said strict protocol," Sid said, shifting uncomfortably. "No access for terminated personnel." "Sid," I said, looking him in the eye, "Austin fired me so he could steal the company I built. He's hurting people. I'm trying to stop him." Sid paused. He looked at the Employee of the Month plaque on the wall, Austin's face grinning back. "He called me sport last week," Sid muttered. "I hate it when he calls me sport." Sid stepped back and held the door open. "I'm going to go to the bathroom for 20 minutes. If the cameras see anything, I was indisposed." "Thank you, Sid," I whispered. "Give 'em hell, Ms. Harper," he said, and shuffled away. I was in. I didn't go to my desk. I went straight to Austin's office. The door was locked, but I knew where he kept the spare key, taped under the lip of the fake ficus plant in the hallway. Predictable. I slipped inside. The office smelled like him. It smelled like them. I didn't touch the computer. I didn't need to. Layla had said I needed the source documents, the amended ownership agreement that Austin referenced in the termination meeting, the document that supposedly diluted my shares. I went to the filing cabinet. It was locked. I grabbed a letter opener from Austin's desk. It was a fancy, heavy brass thing. I jammed it into the lock mechanism of the cheap metal cabinet and twisted. I didn't care about leaving evidence anymore. Snap. The lock popped. I rifled through the folders. Tax returns, lease agreements, insurance. There. A folder labeled Corporate Governance Amended. I opened it. My hands were shaking again. I found the document, Equity Restructuring Agreement, dated 6 months ago. It stated that I, Harper, voluntarily transferred 15% of my equity to a strategic option pool controlled by the CEO and another 5% to the COO, Monica. I flipped to the last page. There was my signature, Harper H. I stared at it. It was blue ink. It looked sort of like my signature, but the loop on the H was too wide. The slant was backward. I write with a forward slant. I pulled out a vendor contract I had actually signed from another folder and held them side by side. The difference was laughable. It was a tracing job, a bad one. "You idiot," I breathed. "You arrogant idiot." He hadn't even hired a pro. He had forged it himself, probably late at night, thinking I would never see it because he planned to fire me before I ever looked in this cabinet. I took the original document. I shoved it into my bag. I had the server logs on a flash drive, thanks to a quick stop at the server closet on the way up. I had the forged contract. I had the money trail. I slipped out of the office, nodded to the empty security desk, and walked out into the night. 10 hours until board meeting. I had the bullets. Now I just had to build the gun. I drove straight from the office break-in to Sandra's house. It was 3:30 a.m. I had called her on the way, waking her up, and she had told me to come to her home office because if you're calling me at this hour, someone is either dead or about to be. Sandra was a shark in human skin. She charged $800 an hour, and she was worth every penny. She was sitting behind her glass desk in a silk robe, sipping espresso that smelled like jet fuel. I slammed the binder onto her desk. He forged my signature, and he's laundering money. Sandra didn't gasp. She didn't blink. She opened the binder and put on her glasses. She flipped past the server logs I'd stolen from the closet. She ignored the photos of the dirt lot in Mesa. She went straight to the stolen document, the Equity Restructuring Agreement. She studied the signature for a long time. The silence in the room was heavy. I could hear the hum of her pool filter outside. "This is sloppy," Sandra said finally, running her finger over the ink. "The pen pressure is inconsistent. See here? The loop on the H? It hesitates. A person doesn't hesitate when signing their own name. They hesitate when they're tracing." "Can we use it?" I asked, my voice tight. "Does this prove fraud?" Sandra looked up and her eyes were gleaming. "Harper, this isn't just fraud. This is the nuclear option. If this document is a forgery, then the equity transfer never happened. Legally, you still own 50% of the company. The dilution is void." "So I can fire him?" "No," Sandra said, leaning forward. "You can't fire him yet, but you can trigger the emergency co-founder clause in the original bylaws, Section 4.3. In the event of suspected malfeasance or criminal activity, any founding partner with significant equity may convene an immediate quorum." She pulled a notepad toward her and started writing furiously. "We are going to call that board meeting," she said, "but we aren't going to frame it as a wrongful termination. We're going to frame it as a criminal intervention. We are going to walk into that room and present a case so airtight that the board will have to choose between firing him or being accomplices to a felony." "He thinks I'm gone," I said. "He thinks I'm broken." Good, Sandra smiled, and it was a terrifying thing to witness. Let him think that. Surprise is your only advantage here. If he knows you have this document, he'll shred the originals and claim you forged this copy. You have to blindside him in front of witnesses. She ripped the page off her notepad and handed it to me. It was a list of instructions. Digitize everything. 3 backups. Hard copies for every board member. Do not speak to him until the meeting starts. Go home, Sandra said. Get your presentation ready. And Harper, don't miss. I got back to my secret apartment at 4:45 a.m. The adrenaline was starting to curdle into nausea. 9 hours until board meeting. I had the physical evidence, but I needed to build the digital presentation. The Project Icarus slide deck needed the raw data from the flash drive I'd used to copy the server logs. The specific IP addresses that proved the wire transfers came from Austin's laptop. I sat down at my desk and plugged the USB drive into my main tower. Whirr, click, click, click. My stomach dropped. That wasn't a good sound. That was the sound of a read-write head smashing against a platter. No, I whispered. No, no, no. I tried to mount the drive. The computer froze. The little hourglass icon spun mockingly. Error. Disk not recognized. The directory structure is corrupted. I yanked the drive out and blew on it like that would fix a catastrophic hardware failure. I plugged it back in. Click, click, screech. Damn it, I screamed, slamming my fist onto the desk. My coffee mug jumped. The drive was dead. The physical logs, the irrefutable proof that linked the Orion payments to Austin's MAC address, were gone. I had the screenshots, sure, but Layla had warned me. Screenshots can be faked. You need the metadata. I put my head in my hands. I was hyperventilating. Without those logs, it was just my word against his. He could claim the screenshots were photoshopped. He could claim I framed him. I looked at the countdown clock. 8 hours, 15 minutes. I couldn't go back to the office. Sid was gone. The day shift would be on duty. My badge was deactivated. I was locked out. I stared at the black screen of my monitor, seeing my own reflection. I looked like a ghost. Think, I hissed at myself. You're the architect. You built the system. Where else does the data go? I closed my eyes, visualizing the network topology of Zenith systems. The local server mirrored to the cloud backup. But Austin had changed the cloud credentials. I couldn't get in the front door. But wait, the sandbox. When I built the system 3 years ago, I created a hidden partition on the cloud server, a sandbox environment for testing dangerous code. It mirrored live traffic so I could test security patches in real time. It was a vestigial limb of the network. Austin didn't know it existed because it didn't show up on the admin dashboard. If the sandbox was still active, it would have a shadow copy of the traffic logs. It was a long shot, a Hail Mary. I cracked my knuckles. I pulled the keyboard closer. Okay, let's go hacking. For the next 3 hours, I didn't move. I didn't blink. I didn't drink my Red Bull. I was typing command lines into a terminal window, text cascading down the screen in green waterfalls. Ping 192.168.055T connection established. The sandbox was alive. Thank God for legacy code. But accessing the data was a nightmare. The partition was encrypted with a 256-bit key I hadn't used in 2 years. I had to write a brute force script to crack my own old password, praying that past Harper hadn't been too security conscious. The room was getting hot. The sun was coming up outside, baking the stucco walls. My shirt was sticking to my back. Progress. 45%. 56%. Come on, I muttered, my fingers flying across the keys. Come on, you piece of junk. The script hit a snag at 6:15 a.m., a firewall exception I'd forgotten about. The connection timed out. No! I had to restart the handshake. I rewrote the packet header manually, spoofing the credentials of a printer. The system would trust a printer. Everyone trusts printers. Handshake accepted. Downloading. Traffic to logarchive.rar. The download bar crawled across the screen. The file was massive. Gigabytes of data. Time remaining, 45 minutes. I watched the countdown clock on the left monitor. 7 hours until board meeting. I watched the download bar on the center monitor. I watched the sun crawl across the floor on the right. It was a race. If the connection dropped, I was dead. If Austin's daily security sweep noticed the bandwidth spike, he'd cut the line. At 7:02 a.m., the download finished. I unzipped the file. I ran a query for Orion. Thousands of hits. I filtered by originating MAC address. There it was. Mac. A45E60. That was Austin's MacBook Pro, and another one. Mac BC3312. That was Monica's iPad. I had them. I had the digital fingerprints. I exported the data into a CSV file and embedded it directly into slide 14 of the presentation. I leaned back in my chair, sweat dripping down my temples. I felt like I had just run a marathon. Gotcha, I whispered. At 8 a.m., I called Robert. Robert was the lead investor of our Series A. He was old school. He liked golf, scotch, and straight shooters. He had always liked Austin because Austin knew which scotch to order. He answered on the second ring. Harper? I heard the news. I'm sorry. Austin said it was performance-based. He lied, Robert, I said. My voice was steady. I was done panicking. He lied about everything. Harper, look. Robert sounded tired. Breakups are messy. I know you two built this together, but if the board voted... The board didn't vote, Robert. Austin fired me unilaterally, and that's the least of it. What do you mean? I'm invoking Section 4.3, I said. Emergency quorum. I need you at the office at 2 p.m. today, and I need you to bring the other board members. There was a long silence on the line. I could hear the clinking of silverware. He was probably eating breakfast on his patio. Section 4.3 is for criminal misconduct, Robert said, his voice dropping an octave. You better be very careful about the words you use next. I have evidence of wire fraud, I said. I have evidence of forgery, and I have evidence of embezzlement totaling nearly $400,000. Send it to me, Robert said immediately. Email me the files. No. Excuse me? If I email it, you'll call Austin. You'll ask for an explanation. He'll spin a story or he'll delete the servers before I can prove it. I need you to see it live. I need you to see his face when I show it. This is highly irregular, Harper. It's a $23 million company, Robert. Do you want to protect your investment, or do you want to protect a thief because he plays golf with you? Silence. Longer this time. 2 p.m., Robert said coldly. But Harper, if you're wasting my time with a lover's quarrel, you'll never work in this town again. I know, I said. See you there. I hung up. My hand was shaking, but I forced it to stop. 12:30 p.m. I took a shower in the tiny stained stall of the studio apartment. I scrubbed off the sweat of the all-night coding session. I washed off the panic. I stepped out and looked at the clothes I had brought. It was a charcoal gray suit, sharp lines, tailored. It was the suit I had worn 3 years ago when we pitched to Robert for the first time. Back then, I was terrified. I was the tech girl standing behind the visionary. Not today. I put on the white silk blouse. I buttoned it to the collar. I pulled on the trousers. I stepped into my heels. Not the sensible flats I usually wore to code, but the 3-inch stilettos that made me 2 inches taller than Monica. I did my makeup, war paint, sharp eyeliner, red lip. I looked in the mirror. I didn't look like the woman dragging a broken chair. I looked like a CEO. I turned to the corner of the room. The broken stool was sitting there, pathetic and tilted. I walked over to it. I touched the duct tape on the seat. I remember, I whispered. I remembered the scraping sound. I remembered the eyes of the staff. I remembered the feeling of being discarded. I wasn't taking the chair with me. It had served its purpose. It was the fuel. I was leaving the anger here, in this room. I was bringing only the ice. I grabbed my laptop bag. Inside, the main laptop, a backup laptop, and 3 USB drives, plus 5 physical binders, heavy with printed evidence. I walked out of the apartment and didn't look back. I pulled into the Zenith parking lot at 1:15 p.m. I didn't park in the visitor lot. I parked in my old spot. The sign still said, "Reserved Harper Vance." Austin hadn't had time to remove the plaque yet. I walked into the lobby. The air conditioning hit me like a physical blow. Chloe, the receptionist, looked up. She was young, sweet, and currently looked like she was seeing a ghost. Her mouth literally dropped open. "Miss Harper," she squeaked. I thought, "Mr. Austin said, "Good afternoon, Chloe," I said, breezing past the desk. "Board meeting in conference room B. Please let security know Mr. Thornton is arriving shortly." "But your badge." I didn't stop. I walked to the elevators. I knew my badge didn't work, but I also knew that if you walk with enough authority, people hesitate. Chloe hesitated. I hit the button. The doors opened. I went to the second floor, the main office. The bullpen was quiet. Lunch lull. But as I walked down the central aisle, the sound of typing stopped. Heads turned. A ripple of whispers followed me like a wake. "Is that Harper? She's back? Look at her suit." I walked straight to conference room B, the glass fishbowl in the center of the office. It was empty. I went in and closed the door. I started setting up. Laptop 1 connected to the HDMI. Project Icarus on the screen. Laptop 2 powered up as a backup. Binders placed at every seat. Thud, thud, thud. I sat at the head of the table, Austin's seat. I folded my hands, and I waited. At 1:55 p.m., the door opened. Robert Thornton walked in first. He looked grim. He was wearing his bad news tie. Behind him came Sarah and David, the other 2 board members. They looked confused and annoyed at being summoned on a Tuesday afternoon. They saw me at the head of the table. They saw the binders. They stopped talking. "Harper," Robert said, nodding once. He sat down at my right hand. He didn't open the binder. At 2 p.m. exactly, the door opened again. "I'm just saying, the quarterly projections are..." Austin walked in, looking at a tablet. Monica was right behind him, laughing at something he'd said. They stopped. Austin looked at the board members. Then he looked at the head of the table. He looked at me. His face went through a complex gymnastics routine. Confusion, recognition, shock, anger. "What are you doing here?" Austin snapped. "Security!" He turned to the door. "Chloe! Why is she in the building?" "Sit down, Austin," Robert said. His voice was quiet, but it carried across the room like a whip crack. Austin froze. "Robert, she was terminated yesterday for cause. She's trespassing. I'm calling the police." "She invoked Section 4.3, Sarah said, tapping the table. "She claims to have evidence of financial malfeasance. We're hearing her out." "Malfeasance?" Monica stepped forward, her face flushing pink. "This is ridiculous. She's a disgruntled ex-employee having a breakdown. Look at her. She's acting out." "I said sit down," Robert barked. "Both of you." Austin looked at the investors. He saw their faces. He realized he couldn't bully his way out of this. He walked over to the chair at the far end of the table, the foot of the table. Monica sat next to him. She looked nervous now. She was picking at her cuticle. "Make it quick, Harper," Austin said, staring daggers at me. "I have a company to run." "So do I said. I hit the spacebar. "Oh." The projector screen lit up behind me. Slide 1, Financial Irregularities, FY 2023. "For the past 18 months," I began, my voice clear and steady, "Zenith Systems has been bleeding capital. On the surface, these appear to be vendor payments for consulting services." I clicked. Slide 2, the invoices. Orion Consulting, Stratum Logistics, Vance Advisory. I looked at Monica. She flinched when she saw her name on the screen. These three entities have billed us a total of $387,000, I said, all for strategic analysis and logistical support. Now let's look at Orion Consulting, our biggest vendor. I clicked. Slide 3, the dirt lot. The photo of the dusty, fenced-off lot in Mesa filled the massive screen. The for lease sign was clearly visible. This is the registered business address of Orion Consulting, I said. I took this photo yesterday. It's a dirt lot. There is no office. There is no staff. The board members opened their binders. I heard the rustle of paper. Robert was staring at the photo, his jaw tight. Furthermore, I continued, notice the payment amounts. $9,900, $9,800. This is a classic structuring technique to avoid IRS reporting triggers. This is absurd, Austin interrupted, his laugh sounding forced and brittle. Orion is a remote-first agency. They don't have a physical office. That's industry standard, Harper. You're embarrassing yourself. Is it industry standard for a remote agency to operate out of your laptop? I asked. I clicked. Slide 4, the MAC addresses. The spreadsheet I had scraped from the sandbox that morning appeared, rows of data. I pulled these logs from the server this morning, I said. These are the IP signatures of the devices that authorize the wire transfers to Orion. They didn't come from an external vendor. They came from a device with MAC address A45E60. I pointed a laser pointer at Austin's laptop sitting on the table. That is your laptop, Austin. The room went dead silent. And the others, I moved the dot, came from Monica's iPad. Austin stood up. You hacked my computer? That's illegal. That's inadmissible. I audited my network, I corrected him, and I found thieves. But the money is just the beginning, I said. Austin fired me yesterday claiming performance issues. He claimed my equity had been diluted. I clicked. Slide 5, the forgery. The side-by-side comparison of the signatures appeared on the screen. My real signature versus the shaky, traced loop on the fraudulent document. This is the equity restructuring agreement filed 6 months ago, I said. I never signed this. I never saw it. I looked at Sandra's notes in my binder. I had a forensic handwriting analysis done this morning. I lied. Well, halfway lied. Sandra's eyes were better than a lab. The pressure points indicate tracing. The slant is incorrect. Robert looked up from the binder. He was looking at Austin with an expression I had never seen before. It wasn't anger. It was disgust. Austin, Robert said quietly, did you forge this? Of course not, Austin shouted. He was sweating now, visible beads on his forehead. She signed it. She was drunk. She forgets things all the time. I have emails, I said, cutting him off. I clicked. Slide 6, the lawyer. I put up the screenshot of the email thread between Austin and Miles, his shady lawyer friend. From Austin subject, the Harper problem. Body, if we dilute her shares now, can we terminate her without cause later? I need her gone before the penthouse closes. From Miles body. Just make sure the paper trail looks real. Trace it if you have to. I had found that email in the sandbox dump. It was the nail in the coffin. He didn't just steal the money, I said, looking directly at Monica. He stole the company, and he used you to do it. Monica looked at Austin. She looked terrified. Austin? You said the lawyers handled it. Shut up, Monica, Austin hissed. He lied to you too, I said to her. He told you I was crazy. He told you I was the problem. But really, he just needed a new accomplice. Robert closed his binder. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. I've seen enough, he said. This is a setup, Austin screamed. He was losing it. She fabricated all of this. She's a coder. She can fake anything. Can she fake the wire transfers, Austin? Sarah asked, her voice like ice. Can she fake the bank records? We can verify these with the bank in 5 minutes. Austin opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked at the door, like he was thinking about running. I move for the immediate termination of Austin Miller and Monica Vance, Robert said formally, for cause, gross misconduct, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. Seconded, David said. All in favor? Aye. Robert looked at me. And I move to reinstate Harper Vance as CEO, effective immediately. Aye, the board chorused. Robert pressed the intercom button on the conference phone. Security to conference room B. 2 minutes later, the door opened. It was Sid the night guard. He was wearing his day uniform, looking crisp. He walked in, took one look at Austin, and smiled, a genuine, happy smile. Mr. Austin, Sid said, I'm going to need your badge and your laptop. Austin stood up. He was shaking. He threw his badge on the table. You'll regret this. You have no idea what you're doing. This company is nothing without me. I'm the face. No, Austin, I said, remaining seated. You wore the mask. We don't need a mask anymore. Sid stepped forward. Let's go, sport. He grabbed Austin by the elbow, firmly. Austin tried to jerk away, but Sid held on. Monica stood up, tears streaming down her face, and followed them out like a funeral procession. I watched them go. I watched them walk past the glass walls. I saw the entire office standing up, watching. When the door clicked shut, the silence in the room broke. Robert stood up and extended his hand. Harper, we should have known. I apologize. I took his hand. Yes, you should have. But we'll fix it. 3 months later, I'm writing this from the corner office. The first month was hell. We had to restate our earnings, which meant admitting the fraud to the rest of our investors. Our stock took a hit. We lost a few clients who liked Austin's charm, but we survived. Austin is currently facing criminal charges. The DA took the Orion evidence and ran with it. Turns out he was also dodging taxes, so the IRS is involved. He's looking at 5 to 10 years. Monica turned state's evidence against him to get a plea deal. She's working at a rental car agency in Tucson now. The company is stabilized. We're leaner, but we're honest. I promoted Casey to lead architect. And in the corner of my office, next to my sleek, modern standing desk, sits a broken, duct-taped rolling stool. Visitors ask me why I keep such a piece of junk in a multi-million-dollar office. I tell them it's my reminder. Never underestimate the person who builds the foundation, because if you try to kick them out of the house, they know exactly which brick to pull to bring the whole thing down. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here,